This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about childhood cinematic trauma, Disney's dark days, and the worst movies ever made. And we do it all completely glibless. All that and more as we watch Season 4, Episode 3 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me as always is my brother and co-host. What's up, Imran?
Hello, human. Your sibling's body will be quite adequate in our plan to repurpose your planet. I mean, hey, how's it going, everybody? How are you?
What?
I don't know. I blacked out for a second. What happened? What are we doing?
Are you feeling okay? What planet are you from?
I don't know. Planet Imran. On my own planet.
Well, that's very apt for today's episode. We are talking about Season 4, Episode 3 of Perfect Strangers, and the episode is called Aliens.
There are a lot of movie references this episode, sister, and we start right at the beginning with the title.
Right, of course. This episode aired on October 28th, 1988. So two things there. October 28th means it's a Halloween episode.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
And 1988, just to note that just 2 years prior in 1986 was the sequel to the movie Alien, and the sequel was called Aliens, which is also the name of this episode.
That is an amazing James Cameron movie. It's probably one of his best movies. It's so good. Have you ever seen Aliens?
I think that I must have, but I definitely can't remember. I should go back and watch it again. Do I have to watch the first one too?
Maybe, kind of. The first two movies are fantastic.
Okay, I'll go back. That'll be my assignment this week. Alien and Aliens.
Alien and Aliens, very good movies. Of course, the show is streaming on IMDb TV, Perfect Strangers, right, for free. But in 1988, there was no IMDb TV. There was just regular TV and a TV guide that told you what was on regular TV. And in the description, if you'd open up that TV guide, the description for this episode reads, Larry braves a Halloween night horror movie marathon, but he awakens the next morning believing Balky has turned into a different kind of immigrant from another planet. Human. Hello, human.
Hello, human. I feel like there was a missed opportunity in this TV guide description to say that Balky has turned into a different kind of alien.
Yeah, there's puns there, definitely.
They missed. Come on, TV guide. Come on. Okay. We have our standard cast, the two couples, Balky, Larry, Jennifer, and Marianne, played by Bronson Pinchot, Marklyn Baker, Melanie Wilson, Rebecca Arthur. We also have our two favorite frenemies from the Chronicle, Belita Marino as Lydia and Jo Marie Peyton Francis Harriet Winslow.
Yeah, you already said this episode aired October 28, 1988. Let's get into Act 1.
Act 1, we are in the basement of the Chicago Chronicle, and there are Halloween decorations everywhere. The Chronicle really gets into Halloween.
It's like Halloween threw up
like
inside.
Streamers.
A lot of orange
it's
and black.
It looks like a party store.
It does. It looks like one of the super party stores you go to. I'm like, are they selling these things? What's going on here?
It's a little much. And Larry's on the phone as we open, and he's telling someone, I don't know who, on the other line that it's going to be a great party. And then he's like, oh, okay, maybe next year. Whoever's on the phone does not want to come to this great party.
Yeah.
And he's got a notepad. He hangs up the phone, crosses off someone off his list on this notepad. And that's when we enter Harriet and Lydia. And we open with this like sort of exchange between Harriet and Lydia that just reinforces to the audience and to the viewers that they have this like love-hate frenemy type relationship. They're always just, mostly Harriet picks on Lydia.
Yeah.
So we have some fun lines to that effect here. And Lydia says to Harry, like, because Larry has called them down to talk to them. And she's like, what's going on? What do you want? I was in the middle of a very important phone call. And then Harriet finds her opportunity to snap in. She says, were you asking your hairdresser if you should go back to your natural color? Oh, burn, Lydia.
Snap. Yeah, Lydia goes, for your information, Harriet, this is my natural color. And Harriet snaps back with, that's about as natural as AstroTurf.
Burn number 2. And it continues. Larry interrupts to try to break this up to invite them to his and Balki's Halloween party, at which they're going to watch the horror movie marathon. And Lydia says, no thanks, I hate Halloween.
Why?
Why? Because she doesn't like a holiday that condones wearing orange and black together.
It's a fashion reason.
Fair point.
Yeah,
Fair
it's
point.
a fashion reason for Lydia. But Harriet's like, oh, I know. The real reason is you're a chicken. She just calls it chicken. Straight out.
Just chicken. Nothing quippy, nothing clever about that. Just chicken.
You're chicken. Lydia goes, no, I'm not. And Harriet's like, please, you haven't showered alone since you saw Psycho, which references the classic shower scene.
Oh, yeah. Another
in
movie
Psycho.
reference.
There's another
That's
movie
right.
out there. Re.
Yes.
And then Lydia's like, well, I guess I know who not to tell my secrets to.
So this is just a little quippy intro between the two ladies. But I feel like Harriet got 3 good burns in here, and Lydia,
she did. Well, yeah.
it's 3-0. Lydia just gets defensive. She doesn't burn her back.
No, Harriet's a lot better at the quips.
She gets mad. Lydia gets mad. She's like, I have to go write an advice column, and she goes up the stairs and she leaves. And then Larry asks Harriet if she would come to the party. Harriet says, no, my mother-in-law's in town, and why watch movie monsters when you can see the real thing? Burn to the mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law joke from the wife. Usually the mother-in-law jokes come from the husband.
Yes.
I like this twist. The mother-in-law, by the way, if you watch Family Matters, the spinoff, she is talking about Carl Winslow's mother, Estelle Winslow. I remember Estelle.
Right. Who later on, when Family Matters starts, Estelle Winslow actually moves in with the Winslow family in the pilot episode.
Foreshadowing. Long
little foreshadowing of a scary monster mother-in-law. But I don't remember Estelle being a monster.
No, she wasn't a monster. She was very tiny. I remember her being this cute little tiny woman. And then just then, Balky runs in to from the loading dock wearing a rather disturbing... What is this?
Yeah,
a
it's
sheep?
really creepy. It's sheep. It's a sheep head.
I thought it was a camel. It kind of looks like a camel.
It looks like a camel, some kind of animal head.
It's weird. And he goes, cousin, guess who? And Larry goes, oh my goodness, who could it be under that
plays
mask?
along. So cute. Yeah.
He's like, Mr. Gorpley? He goes, no, guess again. And he goes, I'll never get it. Tell me who you are, Balky.
And then Balky pulls off the mask and he goes, it's Balky. And then they actually hug each other, which is very endearing.
And then we get a Balkyism where he goes, I guess I'm a good Halloween player. Huh.
And Larry's like, you're the best. They go on to talk about this party, or Larry takes the mask from Balky and he says, everyone's going to love this at the party tonight. And Balky's like, I'm not wearing this to the party. This is just my office costume.
He's got an office costume. He's getting into Halloween, Balky.
And then Larry says, well, you might as well, because no one from the office is coming to the party.
Larry's like a big loser here. He's trying to throw a party.
It's kind of sad.
Nobody wants to go.
So we find out it's going to be just Balky, Larry, and Jennifer and Marianne. And nobody else wants to watch the horror movie marathon. And then Balky asks what I think is a very good question. If nobody else wants to watch it, why do we want to watch it?
Because otherwise, Balky, the episode ends right here. I don't know. That's the reason.
That's true. That's true.
No, but Larry goes, because horror is the fun part of Halloween. And he's trying to mansplain, Larry-splain to Balky. Balky goes, about that, I still don't understand. And he didn't hear the word right because he goes, why would anybody want to sit through 12 hours of horrible movies? I could barely make it through Ishtar.
So he's talking about horrible movies. Yeah. And let's stop for a minute and look at this line. Horrible movies, I could barely make it through Ishtar. What is Ishtar for listeners who are not aware of this?
So for the longest time, a running joke amongst film fans and movie people is if you ever wanted to compare a movie to the worst movie ever made, you would bring up Ishtar. Was considered the worst movie ever made, and pretty quickly, because Ishtar came out in 87. Here we are in 88. This was an American...
It was apparently a notorious failure at the box office.
Yeah, went over budget, didn't make any money. It's a movie directed by Elaine May of Nichols and May, which is like an amazing comedy team. I believe that's her. Produced by Warren Beatty, also starring Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman starred, and they play a pair of untalented American songwriters who travel to a booking in Morocco and then stumble into a 4-party Cold War standoff.
Oh my God.
And for some reason, this was a terrible movie.
I've never seen it, but I've heard for many years this is the worst movie ever. Now, the worst movie ever. It's in a good group, and constantly there are updates to worst movie ever. Before this, you would cite like Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is an Ed Wood sci-fi movie that's really low budget. You could see all the effects, and if you ever seen Ed Wood by Tim Burton with Johnny Depp,
yeah,
that's where suddenly that got popular, and that's like a horrible movie. Fast forward a bunch of years.
What is it now?
I give you 2 more current ones. Battlefield Earth, starring John Travolta, is a very bad movie. But now the biggest one is got to be Tommy Wiseau's The Room. Have you seen The Room?
Oh, yeah, of course. But I love it.
I know, but that's
like a bad...
Like a
you love
bad movie.
The Room. Yeah.
Lisa, you're tearing me apart. Oh, hi, Mark.
Tommy Wiseau's The Room is like the film. It's like kind of like Rocky Horror Picture Show, where you go to an art theater and watch it at midnight.
Everybody says the lines with the movie.
Yeah. I've definitely done that.
But there's a long list of notoriously bad movies, and it continues. You're always going to have them. But Ishtar was the famous one, yes.
So that's the reference. Let's go back to the scene. So Balki says, why would anybody want to sit through 12 hours of horrible movies? I can barely make it through Ishtar. And then Larry's like, no, not horrible movies. And he pronounces it like Balki. Horror movies. Movies that scare you to death. Which also sounds ridiculous to Balki, who says, I don't want to be scared to death. And Larry says, well, sure you do. People love to be frightened. That's why so many of them live in New York.
You know what? He's got a point there. That's why I kind of wanted...
You lived in New York. Was it frightening?
You know what? When I went to art school, like in the mid-90s, just before it got cleaned up. And yes, I wanted to go because of the stories of how dangerous and crazy it was. And it was a little bit, and it's still... I think it's better, but...
I go up to New York every now and then, but it's not terribly
It's better. You know, it's one of those cities where you walk around and you have to have your head on a swivel, just in case. Yeah. Like, New Orleans is like that. Parts of Chicago are like that. New York is like that.
This exchange right here also reminds me of something else. So I'm a comedian, right? And there's like a very common joke that many comedians make about scary movies and haunted houses being for white people to feel danger and fear, and we're like, black people don't have to because it's scary enough just to be alive. Yeah, exactly. So Larry's being very much a white person here. Everybody loves to be scared to death.
So we cut to that night. It is time for the party, and you also see that Larry's the decorations have continued into the apartment, and
oh my gosh,
but
it makes more sense in the apartment.
It does, but
to do an apartment up that much than an office. And I wonder if Larry's so into Halloween, he's got all these decorations at home. I wonder if he was the one who decorated the Chronicle basement as well.
I mean, it's the same streamers. You got like hanging signs, a skeleton, empty pumpkins. What I find weird is that Larry is the horror guy. Like, I never would have called Larry being into horror and Halloween. It is a little strange.
That's true.
Right? It seems a little bit out of character, but it's got to work. It works for this story.
But, people who I love scary movies just because, I don't know, some people just love it. I love feeling that adrenaline.
You are, between the two of us,
scared.
I think you are the horror person because I'm not a big...
I'm the horror person.
I'll watch them, but I don't get super excited.
I love the suspense of something. But I will note that with age, perhaps lately, when I've had to turn off a couple because I've been home alone, and I hear the suspense movie, the music, and I just can't handle it. I'm no, this is too scary for me to watch alone. It's like,
do you like
driving my
zombie
anxiety.
things? Is there a specific
Yeah, I like
kind of
zombie things.
Have you
I
seen
like
All of Us Are Dead on Netflix?
Paranormal.
The Korean.
No, not yet.
Oh my god, it's good.
Oh yeah, I've seen it advertised, but I haven't watched it yet.
I'm almost through.
I've watched the other Korean zombie stuff though. It's all good.
Oh yeah, Train to Busan is also
Train to Busan,
good.
yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about their Halloween costumes here. They're all sitting on the couch watching a scary movie.
And by the way, it's a new couch.
Yeah, this is a very loud, colorful couch. Where did this come from?
Because they tore up the...
Oh, yeah, they flipped the other one.
The green one was covered in vacuum
dust.
cleaner
yes,
dust.
And who knows what else.
And this couch has this pattern on it, right? And the pattern to me, and I've said this before on this show, with certain vests and shirts that Balki has worn, is very Central Asian to me. You know this. I don't know if the listeners do, but I spent a number of years living in Central Asia and working in and out of the region. And this is a very traditional Central Asian style pattern that sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but watch the show. It's very Central Asian pattern, clothing, everything. It comes from that region, but I guess maybe it exists in other places too.
I also think this was like a popular pattern for couches, but in that late 80s and 90s. Like,
you think?
I think it's another thing everybody
it
had.
stands out a little bit. Yeah.
Anyways, so from left to right, Larry is wearing a striped shirt. He has a hockey mask a la Jason.
One of the few times we see him not in a collared shirt.
Not in a collared
with
shirt.
A tie. He still has khakis on, but
and he's got a fake butcher knife through his chest with a big blood stain, which is that's pretty good effect. Like it looks cool with the knife stain now.
Jennifer is in a witch, like a standard witch costume, all in black with a black pointy tall hat. Marianne is wearing her flight attendant's uniform.
I believe she's dressed like Jennifer.
But later, when she stands up, you can get a glimpse that her name tag says Jennifer.
Oh my god, she just borrowed her clothes.
Marianne dressed as Jennifer.
And then Balki, sitting on the edge on top of the couch, is this giant red feathered chicken. Complete with headdress and cloth feet boots.
I love it.
And his knees are like naked, and it's just a very orange chicken.
It's red. It's bright red chicken.
Bright red chicken, matching all the Halloween decor in the outfit or in the apartment. So they're all watching the scary movie, and you hear something screaming, and suddenly Jennifer and the girls jump, and suddenly Jennifer goes, "Well, I've had enough," and they get up and start to leave. And Marianne's had enough too. And Larry's like, "You can't go now. We're only halfway through the marathon. We got 3 movies to go." And just 6 hours of movies is too much. Marianne, as they're all standing by the door, Marianne has a great line. She goes, 6 hours of scary movies is just too much for me. My head hurts. My stomach is all tied up in knots, and I think I'm getting hives. And then she spins on her heels to Balki and goes, "Thanks for a lovely evening."
And then Balki reaches out to shake her hand, and this is so cute. She goes, "Oh, how about a little peck?" And then he like pecks her with his chicken beak. Instead of kissing her.
His little pecking motion a couple times. Yeah.
Yes.
They're adorable together.
They're adorable. And then they leave. The girls leave. And Larry's like, "What is wrong with everybody? They're just scary movies." Balki is trying not to let on that he's a little bit scared too.
It's getting to him a little bit.
Who would be afraid of scary movies? Then Larry has the good old TV guide in his hand.
Oh my God, he does. Yeah.
They're going to miss the best one, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And he reads the description just like we do every week. Aliens take over the planet by replacing everybody with identical twins that they've grown in giant pods. And Balki gets a little more nervous. He's like, "This wouldn't be a lighthearted comedy, would it?" All right, let's talk about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a very important reference for the rest of this episode. We don't need to describe it. Larry has just given us the description from the TV guide. It was released in 1956. It stars Kevin McCarthy and Dana Winter.
This is the first time, this blueprint, this whole invasion idea, this is the predecessor. It's like the granddaddy of them all, and it's been done several times.
On sitcoms?
No, on movies. The movie has been remade and TV shows. Just the whole idea of invasion.
Yeah.
This was it.
So the remake was made in 1978, and it starred Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum, and Brooke Adams. And I feel like that's maybe the one that was airing that night on their TV.
Oh, no.
I don't know. It could have been either.
It could have been the original. The original's classic.
Yeah.
But there was a movie called Body Snatchers in 93. There's a movie called Invasion in 2007.
Okay.
And even today, there was, there's that sci-fi comedy from Simon Pegg, The World's End. There was a TV show called Invasion. There is a TV show right now on Apple TV Plus called Invasion that's running currently.
I feel like a lot of alien movies have this idea that they're replacing people.
Yeah, this was the original. Like the 50s one was the first one. I think it freaked a lot of people out originally too in the 50s. Kind of like War of the Worlds did when that radio play happened.
So Invasion of the Body Snatchers is about to come on the television. Now Balky's a little bit nervous and Larry gives him a hard time. Don't tell me you're scared too. And Balky says, well, of course I'm not. Don't be ridiculous. He just wanted a change of pace, to which Larry suggests watching this one in the dark.
Oh, no.
And he flips the light off. They're still standing by the front door. Yeah. Larry flips the light switch off. And Balky goes, don't do that, turns it back on. And Larry taunts him, afraid of the dark. He flips it back off. Balky says, no, I'm not. Flips it back on. Larry turns the light off again. Balky turns them back on again. Don't do that, he says. And then Larry says, you are afraid of the dark. And Balky says, no, I'm not. They do the light switch off and on again. And they do this back and forth. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Turning the light off and on. And then at one point, Larry just makes a clicking sound instead of
doesn't turn the light off. Yeah.
And then Balky is still in the pattern. So he reaches for the switch and turns it off. You know what he did? Larry pulled a Bugs Bunny on Balky.
Yeah, yes, he did. When does it happen? They're always going.
And then he says, yes, I am. Bugs Bunny does this with Elmer Fudd.
Oh, all the time. He just
when they're like, no, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. No, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Then the person says, yes, I am. And then the other person says, no, I'm not.
I tried to do this in real life. It doesn't really work as smooth because it's
Larry
really funny.
Bugs Bunny's Balky. Okay.
But I love when Balky turns the light off and just starts screaming instantly.
Yeah, he turns it off and he starts screaming. He's like, okay, yes, I am.
Balky doesn't want anything to do with this. He's like, I don't want to watch this at all. And Larry goes, what's the matter? You chicken? And then Balky looks down and goes, well, in a matter of speaking. And then laughs at his own joke and shoots his arms up into the air as he's laughing.
To say, how do I come up with them?
It's so funny. And Larry's trying to explain these movies are just make-believe. And then Balky has this line I thought is interesting. He says, cousin, they are about bad people doing bad things, and I believe they put bad thoughts in our heads. Which is like the argument of many mothers groups about many things throughout the years. Rock and roll, video games, horror movies, like all of it. Always blame the media. It's never the media's fault. But Larry goes, Balky, they're harmless. They go in one eye and out the other. That's a little twist on the saying of goes in one ear and out the other.
Yes.
Which I like that. And he goes, I don't want to watch anymore. And he's like, what do you think too many horror movies will make you into a monster? Larry asks him. And Balky's like, I don't know, but I don't want to take any chances. So I'm going to go in there, brush my teeth, say my prayers, and read The Little Engine That Could just to clear my head.
And he walks away, but he does this like waddling chicken walk back toward the bathroom in the hallway. And as he's waddling away as a chicken, Larry just shakes his head and he's like, God, what planet are you from?
Oh, some foreshadowing.
Yeah. And he's like, guess I'm on my own. So he sits back. He sits on the couch. He grabs his like plastic jack-o'-lantern of snacks or whatever candy and starts eating. And we hear the TV announcer announce Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, and Larry's into it and he's all focused. And then it just cuts to the next morning. Right?
Cuts to the next morning.
Balky is cleaning up the apartment. He's using a carpet sweeper on a chair, which itself is kind of funny. And then Larry comes out. He's getting dressed. He's buttoning his shirt, fixing his tie, and he's trying to sneak up behind Balky. And he sneaks up to him, and he goes, ah! Balky doesn't even budge, doesn't react at all. He doesn't even look at him. He just goes, morning, cousin. You sleep well? While he's cleaning the chair. And Larry's like, I guess I can't scare you. What do you have, eyes in the back of your head? That's an interesting line.
Yeah.
And then we get another. Well, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. As Balky's leaning down, he's trying to clean the cleaner, the sweeper.
Looked at him.
Still hasn't looked at Larry. And he
with
goes,
his back to him.
Then he just goes, your third button up from the top is unbuttoned. Larry's like, what? He doesn't notice that he saw that without even looking over. As Balky has walked to the kitchen, and Larry's like, "Oh, thank you."
And in the kitchen, Balky returns to whatever a thing he's cooking in a pan, and Larry's like, "What are you making?" And he says, "This is makbak siksi."
Oh, this is a new dish. We have
A
not heard
new
about this
Myposian dish. And he
lovely.
picks up a spoonful. You can't really see what it is. It's just like a bunch of stuff on a spoon.
Yeah.
And he goes, "It's pig stomach stuffed with head cheese." And head cheese, of course, is not cheese at all. It's like a meat jelly made from organs and stuff.
But the secret, the thing that puts this dish over the top, it has
just a pinch of cardamom.
A pinch of cardamom, of course, makes everything tasty.
And he tries to offer Larry a taste, who's like kind of makes a disgusted face and waves it away. And Balky says that he thought they would take some with them on their trip because it travels so well.
Where are they going? They're taking a trip?
And exactly, Larry's confused too. He says, "What?" And Balky says, "Oh, we're going to Mypos. Didn't I tell you?" And Larry's like, "No, you didn't tell me." And Balky nonchalantly just says, "Well, I'll be snookered," which is one of his Balkies.
He said that last episode too, I think.
Yeah. And Larry goes into Larry panic. He's like, "Wait, that's a big trip. We need to plan ahead. We need to get discount fares. We got to coordinate schedules. I have to get a passport." And as he's going through this, Balky takes a small step back from the stove, points his finger into the pan, and this flash of laser flash shoots out of his finger and lights the pan on fire.
He shoots a laser
like a flame
from his finger. At first, Larry doesn't flinch. He just goes, "I need a passport." And then Larry goes, "How'd you do that?" And he goes, "Do what?" Larry goes, "You just shot a laser beam out of your finger and set that on fire." And Balky just goes, "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did, Larry." So he goes, "Nope, didn't do it."
Didn't.
Because Balky, I was standing right here. I saw it. And then I love this line. Balky goes, "Well, cousin, I think you must be suffering from an optical delusion." Combining optical illusion with a delusion. That's great.
And he's like, "Maybe you didn't get enough sleep last night. Let me make you do you want me to make you a cup of coffee?" And Larry's like, "No, I don't think so. I'll stick with milk. My stomach feels queasy from all that junk I ate last night." So Larry's at the counter now, and he takes a seat on one of the stools, and Balky gets a carton of milk from the refrigerator and a glass, and he brings it to the counter, and he starts pouring the milk with one hand into the glass in his other hand. Like he's lifted the carton up. It's pouring out. And Larry's like, "Oh, your sik's still burning."
Meanwhile, it's been on fire this whole time.
Yeah.
Like huge flames.
He's like, "Your sik's still burning." And Balky looks over the stove. He's like, "Oh, so it is." So he walks away, but the milk carton is still suspended in the air.
It freezes right
pouring into the glass. And we can hear a superimposed pouring sound. And Larry's just staring at it like, "What the heck?" And this carton is just magically, and then he comes back and he grabs the carton and it's back in motion. He finishes pouring, throws the carton away. And that little edit, it was a little bit of a clumsy edit, but it reminded me of those. I think we've talked about this before on our podcast. Reminded me of those silly magic videos we used to make on our camcorder when we were home. Now you see something cut, now you don't. It was a very clumsy.
It's
effect.
easy. It's an easy effect, but they played it off. I thought it was pretty clean, but easy edit effect there. And Larry's like, "How did you do that?" And Balky goes, "Do what?" He goes, "You made the milk stop and wait for you." And Balky's like, "No, I didn't.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't."
And then Larry's like, "Balky," he turned away, and then he's like, "Oh, I know what's happening. You're getting back at me for scaring you last night. Very clever." He goes, "What is it, magic tricks?" And Balky goes, "What, cousin? I don't know no magic tricks." And right after saying that, there's a coffee mug sitting in front of him. Balky puts his hand way to the left on the counter, and the coffee mug slides over to his hand, and he picks it up and drinks out of it.
How do you suppose they did that, with magnets?
I was thinking magnets or a wire. There'll be wires later, but it could have been easily could have been a magnet underneath. But it's a very smooth little slide over.
He summoned the coffee cup into his hand.
And Larry's like, "Okay, very good. You win." He's like, "I apologize for what I did last night. I will never, ever try to frighten you again." So...
So Balky goes back to the stove and he's like, "Well, I think I'll just let this makbak siksi curdle."
Oh my God, that is hilarious. The curdling is part of the recipe.
Makbak siksi, yes.
Let it get bad in room temperature. Yes.
And apparently this is early in the morning. Oh, yeah, because, it's the next morning. So he says, cousin, let's go to work. And so Balky goes to the front door, grabs his jacket, his Trapper Keeper jacket, puts it on. And Larry goes to the closet to get his, and he says, should we take my car? Or are you just going to beam us over? He's kind of joking.
Yeah.
And Balky's like, oh, come on, cousin. You know on my salary I can't afford a Beamer.
That's a good line.
And he again laughs at his own joke, again throws his arms up in the air, and he goes, where do I come up with them? And he puts on his jacket, and Larry's still at the closet getting his. And Larry opens the closet door, and a giant green pod drops out of the closet.
This is the Invasion of the Body Snatchers pods, of course.
Into Larry's arm, and he's like freaking out now. He's like, Balky, a giant pod? This is going too far. And Balky just looks at Larry and then turns toward the door and walks out through the closed front door, and we hear a little like sound effect there.
He phases through the door like he's an X-Men superhero. Jubilee phases through, or a ghost, which is another really low budget superimpose effect.
Oh yeah, okay.
They did, but it works for this.
How do they do that? Just with editing?
It's got to be like a green screen thing, or I don't know how you would do it back then. And in front of a live audience, what did they do? I don't know how they did this.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure.
All of that stuff in front of a live. They couldn't have done the milk carton in front of a live audience.
Yeah, I wonder how they got away with all this.
Maybe if it was magnets, but
some of the stunts later are clearly in front of a live audience. But this phasing through the door effect, is funny.
So Larry watches Balky just like walk through this closed door, and he is now like completely in shock. And he's like, we close the scene and the act with Larry just looking really nervous and scared and worried. And Balky has left the space.
Before we get to the second half, listener, if you enjoy Perfect Strangers and our podcast and you want to meet more Perfect Strangers diehard fans, and leave comments on the episode, get involved, be a part of the show, there's one great place you can go to do that. It is our Facebook group. There is a link in the description of this episode, every episode. Join it today, and we'll be reading. I post a thread for every episode as we go through the season. You can leave your thoughts and comments, and we will share them at the end of the show, because they're always enlightening and funny and bring up things that are fun to discuss. It's a lot of fun. Great community of Perfect Strangers fans right there
People
for
who
you.
Really nerd out right along with us.
Yes, it's great. Keep it up, fam.
All right, moving on to Act 2. Again, this is the third episode or the fourth episode in a row where we, like, it seems so far in this whole season, there's only 2 acts in every episode.
Yeah, I think this is also the nature of it, how they've put it in on IMDb TV, because probably when it originally ran, they forced 2 breaks somewhere for commercials.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it aired like this, and like the network would just force a break somewhere.
But I also don't see a logical act break later on in these episodes.
They're all very straightforward plots, so you don't really need
with like really one story going on, where typically sitcoms would have at least 2 stories happening.
But so the 2 parts, it works fine for this.
Right. Okay, so Act 2, we're back at the Chronicle, and it's the day after Halloween, but the decorations are still up, all those decorations. And
Larry hasn't taken them down. I believe it's probably his
it's
job.
It's just him.
It's his crappy job to put them up and take them down. Nobody else cares.
And Larry runs into the basement, and he's like in a full-blown Larry panic, and he's like, Harriet, Lydia, thank God you're here. And they're both standing like near his desk. So he runs in, and
you notice
notably, they are both wearing embroidered vests.
Meepostian style vests. There's a lot of Meepost vests in this episode. Like a lot of
just a little something to notice right
So
here.
you notice their outfits are a little bit different.
But Larry doesn't notice. He's just in his panic, and he tells them, you're not going to believe it. And he tells him what he saw that morning. He tells him he saw Balky walk through a door, and he made a carton of milk float in midair, and he started a fire with his finger. To which Harriet leans in and says, "Let me smell your breath, baby."
You've been drinking.
And he says, he hasn't been drinking. And then Lydia suggests, but did you watch all 12 hours of that horror movie marathon last night? And Larry's like, yeah, so? And she goes, you watched weird movies? Now you're seeing weird things. And Larry's like, okay, maybe.
He goes, I suppose that could be the explanation. And then Harry goes, you bet it could, cousin. You're like, what? And Larry's like, well, what did you say? She goes, what? He goes, you called me cousin. And she goes, no, I didn't, baby. And he's like, yes, you did. And she goes, I called you baby.
Baby.
She goes, there's no way we're cousins. And then they just both calmly look at each other. It's just kind of funny.
And then Larry's like, wait a minute. Then he notices and he looks at them. He says, you two seem different. And then they just kind of roll their eyes. Harriet says, you're just now noticing that. And Lydia's like, listen, relax. The next thing you know, you'll be saying that Balky's an alien and he's turning us into aliens to take us back to his home planet. And then they both like lean their heads back and laugh in this big,
oh my God,
like,
it's
laughter.
cackle. They're cackling.
Yeah.
Like huge, like weird cackles. And I'm like, what is going on?
Cackle remarkably strong cackles. Then they walk to the elevator and disappear through the elevator door. Phase through the door.
Larry sees that. He's like, I'm going crazy as he sits at his desk. And he's like, okay, I watched the horror movies. That's got to be it. I got to relax. He's like, I need to get my mind off this. He goes, the Bears. How are the Bears doing? He picks up the newspaper to read about the Bears. And you notice on the front page, there's a headline.
Yeah, because he picks it up with the back page to him, so the front page is facing out.
The headline says, Planet Mepos discovered behind Planet Pluto. So
behind Pluto.
Behind Pluto. Planet Mepos discovered behind Pluto. And Larry's reading it, and he folds it up, puts it down, puts the paper down. He looks at the cover, sits normal, and then does a great double take and goes back, and his eyes widen, and he grabs the paper, and he reads it. He's
Planet Mepos.
Planet Mepos. And as he's reading this, you see Balky float down from the ceiling next to him.
Hi,
from
cousin.
the air. He goes, hi, cousin. And
Hi, cousin.
He jumps. He goes, how did you get here? He goes, oh, I just dropped in.
And then Larry tries to call him out. He says, you can't fool me anymore. I know all about Mepos. It's right here on the Chronicles front page. And he grabs the paper and he puts it in front of Balky's face. Or like he turns around to put it in front of Balky, but Balky's gone because Balky has floated back up out of the screen, out of the scene. And he looks around in confusion. He turns the other way. And when he turns the other way, Balky just floats back down into the screen. And Larry turns back around and jumps. And he's like, where were you? And Balky's like, I never left the room.
You also notice the headline is now different.
Well, Larry still thinks it's about Planet Mepos. So he says he thinks he's caught Balky. He says, you're not going to be so glib after you read this. And he pushes the newspaper in his face. And Balky reads out loud the headline that's on the front page now, which says, City Council approves annual budget. And he says, you're right, cousin. I'm glibless.
I'm glibless. I'm glibless. That's so funny.
Glibless.
And then Larry is so confused. He goes, it was right on the front page. And Balky's like, well, cousin, I think your mind is pulling your leg, which is kind of funny.
Which is a great line. A great play on words.
Because it's pulling your leg, but it's a person pulling your leg. Your mind is pulling your leg. And Larry's just like, what is happening? Why am I seeing things that aren't there? He goes, I mean, what's, and he's trying to say a sentence, and we see from the back out of the archives, this lady pushes this mail cart past them with a giant pod on it. And he goes, what's, and he steps in and goes, what's in that mail cart? And Bucky goes, the mail. It comes at this time every day. And Larry's like, that was a pod. Now I get it. He goes, the fire, the milk, walking through the doors, it's all coming together. You are a strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond that of mortal man, and who disguised as Balky Bartakamus, mild-mannered sheep herder working for a great metropolitan newspaper, is turning us all into mepiates so you can take us back to your planet.
And Balky just goes, darn, you got me.
No, it's true. What is happening here?
So Larry's in shock because it's true. It's all true. And Larry's like incredulous, like, how is this true? And Balky says, I may be an alien bent on world conquest, but I'm no liar. And then this is great. We learn about Planet Mepos. He says, cousin, you're going to love Mepos. The climate is perfect. All men are created cousins, and we've conquered cellulite.
Wow, sounds like a great place. I want to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
What are the women created cousins? What happens to them?
Huh?
He says all men.
Women.
All
yeah,
men.
all men and all. It was 1988.
True.
All men meant all men and women.
It did, didn't it?
Yes.
No cellular. So that's a plus.
But Larry is not having it. He does not want to go to another planet. And Balky says, but I always go where you want to go. And Larry's like, I don't want to go to Meepos. I'll never go to Meepos. Nothing you can say will ever make me want to go to Meepos, which is kind of rude.
Yes.
Again, about Meepos. And then he's like ranting, I'll never go, I'll never go. And Balky just puts his hand on Larry's forehead, and Larry's kind of like cocks his head a little bit, and his eyes cross.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And then he becomes submissive. And Balky says, he's like hypnotizing him with his hand on his forehead. And he says, cousin, you want to go to Meepos. And then Larry says in a Meeposian accent, I want to go to
it's
Meepos.
so cute when he do his delivery.
And then Balky says, when the mama ship gets here, you'll be the first one in line. And Larry, again, in a Meeposian accent, says, when the mama ship gets here, I'll be the first in line. And then Balky says, and when we say, who wants pig snout? You'll say, I do, I do. And then Larry says, he repeats the first part. He says, and when you say, who wants pig snout? I'll say, and then he like struggles a little bit and flinches. And then finally he like, instead of finishing, he like pulls his head out from Balky's hand. And he says, I'll never eat pig
it's
snout.
So funny. That's what snapped him out of it was the pig snout. It's a little bit
but
too
you'd
far.
think by now he's already eaten pig snout.
I thought that too. I thought he tried it at the
Ding
party.
Mahmoud, he's had it. They had a whole dinner about it.
Did we actually see them eating it though? Putting it in his mouth?
That's all that there was.
That's true. I don't think he likes it though. He's clearly not a fan. And then Balky just goes, you have a very strong will, Earth boy. And he goes, Balky, how can you do this to the Earth? You used to be so nice. And here we find out the reason for this alien invasion
or Meepos,
alien removal. He goes, well, we Meepiats were nice for 6,000 years. And then one day somebody suggested, hey, why you don't watch scary movies? They won't hurt you. And then he goes, they just go in one eye and out the other. And when he does this, I think Bronson Pinchot is actually doing this. When he goes one eye, Bronson is able to move one eye.
Bronson Pinchot is actually an alien, I think.
He's able to move his right eye into the corner while keeping his left eye straight. I don't know how you do this. Like, I can cross my eyes, but he just crosses one eye.
And then he does the opposite way. He does it that way when he says they go in one eye, and when he says out the other, he switches.
Oh my God.
The two eye positions, like people positions.
And then he goes,
it's a very weird and creepy thing.
It must hurt. I don't know how he did that.
Yeah.
But he goes, well, they checked in, but they didn't check out. They set up housekeeping. They begat bad thoughts. And those bad thoughts got together and had little bad thoughts. And he's like cradling a baby when he says that. And he goes, and those little bad thoughts grew up into a big bad thoughts. And now Balky is just floating in the air above Larry. He goes, and now all we have is big bad thoughts. So we're taking the Earth over just for kicks.
And then he goes,
and it's funny, you can kind of see the wire in some of these upcoming wire moves. Yeah. But it must have been fun for BP to just
and he laughs
float
maniacally
in the air
possessed.
As Larry runs away.
Then we cut to the next scene, which is back at the apartment, and Larry runs into the front door. We have some good physical comedy here. He runs into the front door, slams it shut, and then like frantically fiddles with the chain lock for like a moment, and he can't get it because he's so nervous. And then he just like leaves.
Waves it off. He goes, forget it.
Yeah. And he runs across the apartment. He picks up the phone in the kitchen counter. He dials it. He's like, hello, Jennifer, it's Larry. Drop what you're doing and get down here. And right then there's a knock at the door.
Instantly.
Across the apartment. And he still has the phone in his hand.
Yes.
And he looks toward the door across the apartment. He says, who is it? And he hears, it's Jennifer. And he's like, what? And he looks at the door and he looks at the phone. He's like, and then he hangs up the phone. He goes to the door. He opens it. He's like, how did you get here so fast? And she just nonchalantly was like, you sounded upset. So I hurried. And she asks him what's wrong, and he pulls her in, and he does the whole door thing again. Yeah. Shuts the door, fumbles with the change. He's like,
And he goes to Jennifer. He goes, I have proof that Balky is from a planet called Meepos, and they're taking over the Earth. You've got to believe me. And Jennifer just goes, Larry, I believe you. And he goes, you do? And he goes, why?
Why?
It's just like, well, for one thing, Balky is floating outside the window right now, and it cuts to Balky floating outside
the window, which is so weird. Why would he even be doing that?
And Jennifer is walking over to open the window, and he's like, no, don't let him in. We've got to leave right now. And he's like, if we stay, we'll become meepits. And then, just then, Jennifer pulls open her coat, puts her hands on her hips, revealing a meat
She's wearing a vest.
And she's like, what's so bad about being a meepian? What's so bad about that? And he's like,
Yeah, she says, is that really so bad? And she calls him cousin. And Larry's like, oh no, you're wearing a vest. You're one of them. And then Jennifer takes off her coat, and Larry tries to run away, and he runs toward the front door. But before he gets there, we see Lydia, Harriet, and Marianne phase in through the closed front door, and they're all wearing vests also. And they all simultaneously go, hi, cousin. Going somewhere? And he tries to run away the other way, but Jennifer's on the other side. And meanwhile, Balky drops down from above in the apartment.
From the ceiling, yes.
Inside now, not outside the window, inside. And he comes down to the floor and he says, time to go. The mama ship is double parked.
They all laugh. They all do the cackle laugh.
Yeah. And then Larry's like, he's changed all of you into meepits. And then in unison, all of them go, well, of course he has. Don't be ridiculous.
That's kind of so funny. They're chanting it at this point. And then Balky's like, let me give you a hand, cousin, as he tries to subdue him and hypnotize him again. And Larry runs away. He's like, I'm not falling for that one again. You'll never take me. And at this point, Balky has a vest in his hand, and he's walking towards Larry. He's like, oh, come on, cousin, be one of us. Put on the vest. Alterations are free.
So the weird thing for me about this episode is they have all the pods in the scenes just to be referenced to Invasion of the Body Snappers.
Yeah.
Snatchers, but that's not actually how you become a meatbeat. You become a meatbeat by putting on the vest. So what are the pods for anyway?
Well, I don't know. Pods are for in transportation. But yeah, the vest is the catalyst to become a meatbeat.
And so Balky is trying to get Larry to put on this vest, and Larry's shouting, no, no, no. And he's running around the couch, but everybody's blocking his way. And they're closing in on him with this vest, and he's crying. He's screaming, get away, get away. And Balky floats into the air, and he's laughing maniacally. And he motions for Larry to rise as well. And Larry actually then floats into the air, and he turns around to run, but he's just running in place in the air.
It's so funny. And then he tries to swim away.
It's in the air, physical comedy.
And everyone is going, cousin.
And Balky's laughing maniacally.
So they're hanging both Markle and Baker, Bronson Pinchot from wires, which you can barely see in this scene. It looks really good.
He tries to swim.
And he's like trying to swim away, and it's so funny. And then you see something distinctive that finally reveals what is happening. The screen gets all wavy.
Yeah, it gets wavy.
Of course, this has been a dream.
And we fade back into reality, and Larry's lying on the couch. Balky's standing over him. He is holding a vest, and he's trying to wake him up. And Larry's going, get away, get away. And Balky's like, cousin, cousin. And then Larry opens his eyes, and he screams. He's like, don't come any closer. And Balky's like, how would that be possible? He's standing right there.
So Larry's still in his Halloween costume now.
Yes, with the knife and the striped shirt.
Because he gets up and he goes, you'll never put that vest on me. And Balky's like, well, cousin, I wouldn't think of it. It don't go with the knife in your chest.
That's so funny.
And then he goes, what? And then he looks down and Fred goes, ah! And then he goes, oh, I've got a knife in my chest. Oh, that's great.
That's great.
So he walks back to the couch. He realizes he fell asleep in front of the TV. And Balky's like, cousin, I think you were having a bad dream. And Larry's like, oh, it was awful, Balky. In my dream, you were from a planet called Mebos, and you were taking over the Earth. And that wasn't the awful part. The awful part that was you were not nice. And he just starts laughing like, ha, ha, ha. Can you imagine that? Balky Bartakamus, not nice. And he's laughing. And then suddenly
he gets nervous.
He gets a little nervous and stops laughing and looks at Balky. Maybe he's not awake. He's not sure.
He's got to make sure. So he says, Balky, just for argument's sake, what would you do if a total stranger came up to you on the street and took your money, kicked you in the shins, and said your mama wears army boots? And Balky's answer is like so lovely.
It's so good.
Balky says, Well, if he took my money, I'd say spend it wisely. And if he kicked me in the shins, I'd say, you should join a gym to find a more positive way of taking out aggression. And if he says my mama wears army boots, then I say, you've seen mama? How does she look?
Larry's like, you are Balky. And he hugs.
And they try to hug, but he still has the knife in his chest.
That's going to be painful.
So he takes off the knife, he drops on the couch, and they hug.
I think the audience applauses at that point, too, or something. Yeah. They're like, oh, thank God.
There's a lot of hugging in this episode. They hug, and then they go to sit down, but Larry sits on the knife that he's just put there, and he like jumps up a little. He's like, woo. He moves the knife, and they both sit down, and then we hear our favorite lesson time music. Larry says, I never want to have a nightmare like that again. And Balky goes, observation. If you hadn't watched all those scary movies, you wouldn't have had that bad dream. And Larry says, ever since my parents took me out of Fantasia crying, I've been trying to prove something. So here's our final movie reference of this episode. Fantasia. So I think we should explain Fantasia because it's a little bit dated and I think younger people might not have watched it growing up. So Fantasia was the third Disney animated feature film, and it was made in 1940, and it's just like classical music played by orchestras
with this lush animation. Yeah.
And it's pretty like trippy. Like you can imagine people were on drugs, the animators are on drugs. And it's a bunch of different pieces, a bunch of different classical music pieces. So it's like segmented, right? And different stories in animation. There's no talking or anything. It's just music. And there's one segment that's called The Night on Bald Mountain. That's the name of the piece or the name of the sequence. We will put a YouTube link to this.
You can watch this sequence.
It's a few minutes long in our notes, but this particular one, Night on Bald Mountain, is very dark. It takes place, part of it's like dark themed, dark colors. And if you can imagine 1940s style animation with music, with like classical music, but intense dark music. And a bunch of it takes place like in a cemetery and there's ghosts and
there's like a shadow demon and skeletons.
There's demons and ghosts and skeletons and there's a cemetery. So I don't know why they made this for a children's animated feature
for
film.
Years, I've wondered. Fantasia is the weirdest Disney. Like it's Disney, right? But Disney in the 40s.
Disney.
You think about Disney now, you think family friendly, safe, whatever.
This was dark.
Third movie for a movie with Mickey Mouse in it. This was a very dark and creepy
just this
movie.
sequence. I think it was just this segment of the movie. This
because the rest of it, he's dancing with brooms and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's
wow,
Fantasia,
like even now, today, you watch this and you're like, this is kind of scary and dark for Disney.
Right.
Disney did this.
Disney,
it's so weird.
Yeah. Drugs.
Yeah.
Okay, well, back to the lesson time. Larry says that his parents took him out of Fantasia crying and he's been trying to prove something. So really, he does get scared.
Yeah, he does. He's just trying to test himself and prove him and
show some bravado or something.
So he's not a real horror guy for real.
I don't know. And so Balky says, well, cousin, you did prove something. You proved that if you watch 12 hours of scary movies, then you have a nightmare. Of course, the rest of us already knew that. That's why you were watching them alone. And Larry has this great line, well, why learn the easy way when you can learn the hard way? And Balky says, that's the motto you live by.
This is basically Larry's
So that's the lesson.
Absolutely.
It's a very sort of superficial lesson, this episode.
But he does this almost every episode, is just learning things the hard way.
Yeah.
It's a very Larry thing to do.
So that's the lesson, after which the two of them start cleaning up. Larry gets up, like grabs a bowl of potato chips, and he's talking to Balky, who's in the kitchen in front of him. And he's like, boy, what a nightmare. It was the craziest thing. Every time I turned around, you were gone. And when he looks up, Balky's gone again because he's moved to be behind him in the living room. Balky walks up from behind him and he goes, cousin. And then Larry just jumps and popcorn flies all over. He's holding a bowl of popcorn. It flies all over the place. And roll credits.
Listener, check out our TeePublic shop. Get some swag. Get some... they're not scary t-shirts, but they're fun t-shirts.
No Fantasia.
Scary, dark
Night
demon.
on Bald Mountain t-shirts, but only fun Perfect Strangers Dance of Joy t-shirts.
danceofjoypod.com/shop will get you there, and you can get our logo on lots of things: cell phone cases, face masks, laptop covers, hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, stickers, all different colors. A lot of fun swag. Wear something nobody else has. And send us a picture if you do. Let me ask you this question. Let's dive into our thoughts before we get to listener comments. That whole Fantasia bit gave me a question. Is there a movie that traumatized you as a child? Because I have a few examples.
Yeah, not quite a young child, but like I said before, I love scary movies.
Yeah.
But there was one movie that like really I found so scary and creeped me out. And it's not a traditional like slasher, gory, scary movie, but it was Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, that'll do it. Yeah, that one will do it. Yeah.
I wasn't like a small child, but I don't know what year was Silence of the Lambs. I must have watched it it was fairly young when I watched it. Not like a child, and I don't think I've seen it again since because it just
great movie.
So scary.
I have 3 examples. Okay. In chronological order. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I was 6, our cousins took me to a movie that was not appropriate. Have I mentioned this?
No. No.
They took me to see Poltergeist.
Oh, boy.
When I was 6 years old. I remembered nothing from being 6 years old except for this stupid movie scaring the crap out of me. Like, this was not appropriate movie to take a 6-year-old. And oh my God, I vividly remember the scenes coming up and just like this one point where this guy just peels his face off. He's washing his face and his face starts to come off. And I remember all this. I'm like, to this day, I'm like, why would you think it was okay to take me to Poltergeist?
A 6-year-old.
Yeah. Okay, so then fast forward a couple of years, I'm in public school, and the first movie I remember watching in an assembly auditorium with a whole class was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which is not a scary movie,
scenes.
except for the scene where they're going through the tunnel and he's acting all weird and they're projecting images of giant bugs. And
another very trippy drug-induced scene.
Will we ever stop going? I was like, what's going on? Okay, and then fast forward a little bit more. I'm a preteen, early teenager, and this is funny. The title of this movie, Aliens. When I first saw James Cameron's Aliens, I loved it, and I had nightmares of those aliens that night.
Did you watch it in the theater?
No, I watched this at home. I remember I watched it in like our parents' bedroom on the TV, and I did have, it was so good, it left such an impact. I had nightmares of aliens that night. So those are my three instances.
Yikes. Yeah, I don't think like I was ever really moved by the actual supernatural horror or alien movies in a way that like traumatized me. But like I think Silence of the Lambs was like a more realistic horror movie, you know, like set in reality. And that's why it traumatized me. I was like, wow, that is
a lot of ways
is
scarier because you're like, this guy could be outside my house right now. Like this could happen.
Because like I guess like I'm a logical part of me always knew that like the monsters and aliens aren't real.
And this is why I never, that show America's Most Wanted, I hated watching it because they'd be like, this dangerous criminal could be outside your house right now.
Like,
like, why are you telling me this? Oh my God, stop scaring me.
Exactly. But I did say a more recent movie that I actually screamed in the theater. And my friends were like, whoa, did you do that? I was like, yeah, I surprised myself too. It was the recent remake of Pet Sematary.
Really?
Yeah, it was so scary. It was so scary. I screamed.
Oh my God. Is it a good movie? I heard it was it's better.
I don't think I've ever seen
the
original or read the book, which I'm also told is very scary, but the most recent remake from like a couple of years ago.
I mean, I got to credit to Stephen King for giving us some amazing, like I'll watch a Stephen King movie because I know I've read a bunch of his books because he's just a master at this and it's so well done.
Now, let's talk about this episode. Back to our thoughts on this episode. I thought it was like kind of a light, silly Halloween episode. Like I said, the story was pretty like flat and surface. It was one pretty straightforward storyline, nothing else going on. The lesson learned was also not super deep, but we had some great fun physical comedy in the air.
You know what I thought when this episode ended? I had one word. I was just like, oh, that was cute. Like, it's just a cute episode, you know? I don't know.
It was just cute. It wasn't like cute. Wasn't like something that stayed with me very long. Also, I thought there was like a lot of missed opportunities here for this joke about Balky being an immigrant alien, like a legal alien. And my hunch is that it was probably included in earlier versions of this script and maybe taken out for time. I don't know. There were a lot of things that were like a little confusing to me why they made these decisions. But again, they were working with 22 minutes, so.
You think they just felt like they were trying to be sensitive to like actual immigrants and aliens?
Maybe.
And maybe it was going too far.
Maybe it was too sensitive. Maybe that in 1988 you weren't allowed to say alien,
but also
with respect to immigrants.
In a script writing process, especially for a sitcom where things are literally and movies, they're being rewritten as you're shooting. A lot of times you're getting new pages every day. Like you have 22 minutes. You got to trim this down to a tight 22 minutes. And that, unfortunately, means cutting out a lot of some more jokes and references and exposition and driving the point home a little bit.
Yeah, but
better.
I think, I don't know. I wonder if like maybe too much was cut out because there were a lot of like things that were left unexplained. And it was just this episode just felt very like, what do you call it?
Shallow?
Not in depth, shallow.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Surface, shallow, quick and easy. But it was fun. They're always fun.
It's cute. Yeah, it's always fun and cute. I was like, I just thought like, oh, that was cute. They got a little, he got a little scared, little dream sequence.
Well, let's see. Let's see what our listeners had to say. We have our favorite listeners chiming in. Again, if you want to chime in on the episodes we post in advance, the episode will be recording in the group, the Facebook group. So join that. The information's on our website, and you too can add to the conversation. So what do our listeners have to say? First up, we have cousin Evelyn Behar, who has at least two things to say. The first is the idea that watching bad people do bad things can put bad thoughts in our heads, so much so that we might change who we are fundamentally, is an interesting and age-old idea.
Yep.
In season 3, Balky didn't want people arguing in front of the Bibi Bobkas because it might ruin them.
Yes.
They should hear words of love.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. And Evelyn Behar also writes, a new Miposian dish,
Yes.
machbach seek, pig stomach stuffed with head cheese. Okay, this is like the third time in the show that they've mentioned head cheese. I've always meant to look it up. I've never heard of it. So I finally did, and it's not a cheese at all. It's meat jelly, and the Google images are not appetizing. So I'm familiar
You've
with
had it.
this meat jelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's big in Europe, and I spent some time in Russia as well as Central Asia, which is not Europe, but it has some
popular
holdover
snack out
cultural
there.
places,
Yeah.
and it's a common thing for like
repurposing parts of the animal.
it's like a part of the snack that's on the table before the meal
Yeah, like
when the vodka
appetizer.
shots are
Sure,
out.
sure.
Yeah, to take with.
Is
with
it good
booze.
though? Is it tasty? I've asked this before, and you said I forgot. I think you said no. I think it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, I mean, it's an acquired
Doesn't
taste.
look great.
I don't like to knock on other cultures' cuisines,
Sure,
but it's an acquired taste.
visually, it's very interesting.
I think it serves a functional purpose more than a taste one for absorbing alcohol and stuff.
Oh, sure.
To have with
That makes
booze.
sense.
Yeah. Anyway, and it's like it also serves a purpose where like a lot of cultures like to use every part of the animal
Right,
so that nothing
that's
goes
what I
to
thought.
waste.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so if you're doing like every part of the head or whatever of a pig or something, like you get that gelatinous stuff.
You got to use everything.
put it in
You
the meat
can't,
jelly,
use it all.
Not every culture is as wasteful as
I
us
know,
Americans
yes.
are, you know?
Yes. What are you throwing that up for? You could eat it. What are you doing? Anyways, cousin John says, not a great episode for me. Not a big fan of dream sequences or anthology/fantasy episodes. It feels like they tipped the fact it was a dream way too early for there to be any suspense. I've seen worse episodes, but I've seen many more better. Now, let's be honest. We all knew the minute it starts. What point did you realize you're like, oh, this is clearly a dream, I think, in the episode?
I kind of figured it right the next morning when Balky says the button on your shirt is unbuttoned.
Yeah, but even that
the way they set it up.
Yeah.
They set it up.
Even that
really,
you could have played off. But when he starts zapping things and doing magic tricks, then I'm like, okay, I see what's going on.
Yeah, it's true. John's right. They tipped it early.
It's a good trope. Cousin Pam comments, Marianne going as Jennifer is the laziest and most genius costume there is. Yeah, absolutely. It's both things. And then this is a really good comment. I feel they missed the boat on this also. She says 6 hours of scary movies and nobody is cuddling. That's the perfect excuse. If Larry was smart, this would have been the move to get Jennifer to jump in his arms.
It kind of surprised me because, Larry's always the one who's like, this is our plan to get the girls
right,
to
he's
be
always
physical or
right,
whatever.
He's trying
blah,
to be
blah.
sneaky about it.
So you would think that his whole thing was like, we're only going to watch these scary movies so the girls will have to touch us or whatever stupid thing he believes.
That's totally something Larry would have came up with. And he was so into the scary movies, he didn't even think about that. I'm like, come on, Larry. That's the reason you go with the girl to the scary movies.
Yeah. So they just sat there like one next to each. Maybe there was cuddling and we didn't see it. Yeah.
But clearly Jennifer was not having fun to begin with. So
Jennifer never has fun. I still maintain. I have said this before and I will say this till season 8.
She's not into him.
Like, I just don't think it's not believable to me. Like, she just doesn't seem into him. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
if that's
what
bad acting or if
is.
it's on purpose or what, but
the chemistry is not clicking still 4 seasons in. I don't know what's going on. They're barely like
Balky and Marianne are cute, are adorable, but Jennifer and Larry just don't do it for me. But
and then look, let's talk about the fantasy aspect of this episode, because this is a classic trope of dream sequence fantasy, to kind of subvert expectations. Apparently this one is inspired. The most famous one is from the Dick Van Dyke Show, the 50th episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, called It May Look Like a Walnut. And I think it was...
I need to go back and watch this because I don't know what this show is.
It must be the first instance of like a dream sequence on TV.
That's right. And there's a really fun connection to all that with this particular episode of Perfect Strangers. It may look like a walnut, this episode of Dick Van Dyke. It was mostly a dream. It was cooked up in the character Rob's mind after watching a horror movie before going to bed, right? Similar setup. And there's a co-star on that episode who played Rob's neighbor. And the co-star, the actor's name is Jerry Paris, who later went on to direct episodes of Happy Days. And he directed an episode of Happy Days that was called My Favorite Orkin.
That's the episode they introduce Robin Williams as Mork from Ork, who eventually spins off to Mork and Mindy,
which is a show about an alien coming down in a pod, which happened to be an egg.
Yes.
And Mork and Mindy was created by Gary Marshall, Joe Glauberg, and the Perfect Strangers creator, Dale McRaven.
Oh my God, look at this connection.
And a lot of the people from the production team and the crew of Perfect Strangers also worked on Happy Days and Mork and Mindy.
That's such a great connection.
So it's like all a little circular.
That's here. Another like underappreciated show. I loved Mork and Mindy.
Mork and Mindy, I think it's great. Yeah,
funny. I love the bit where the Orkins, they age backwards. Remember that? Like as you get older, you look younger. So then later in the show, the late seasons, Mork has a kid. And it's played by Jonathan Winters as an old man. Is the baby?
Oh yes, I do remember that.
And then Ork. Then we actually meet was it Mork calling Orko? Come in, Orko. More. I forgot. No, what was his name?
Who's the guy
Mork calling. Crap, I can't remember. Orson. Mork calling Orson. Come in, Orson.
Come in,
but
Orson,
I believe when we meet Orson in the last season, he is played by like an 8-year-old boy.
Because
he's really old.
Now that you explain that,
age
I do remember
backwards.
That.
I always thought that was so clever at Mork and Mindy. Such a good show.
True.
Yeah, great connection though with all that.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of background here. Let's see, what else did we have in this show? We had a lot of "Don't Be Ridiculous."
Oh yes, we did. There.
Of course, I have "Don't Be Ridiculous."
I think I counted twice from Balky and a third time in unison from Marianne, Jennifer, Harriet, and Lydia.
That's great. It's great.
And we finally have Dimitri back.
Dimitri is back.
Tell us about Dimitri.
You can see, I noticed Dimitri, he's on the bookshelf in the background. On their bookshelf, he's wearing like a red feather boa. But he is also, if you look carefully, he is levitating between the shelves. Just as a little foreshadowing, before you even see Balky float, you see Dimitri floating on the shelf. And we see Dimitri floating another place over on our friend Dimitri Sheep's actual Instagram account in the post for this episode.
That's right. Please go over and follow Dimitri Sheep on Instagram. Dimitri Sheep is on this journey of rewatching Perfect Strangers with us and posting an episode themed post every episode. So it's really wonderful. So if we head over to Dimitri Sheep and we see the post for this episode, it is titled Aliens. The location is marked as Chicago Horror Film Festival.
I think that's a real festival too, possibly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And let's see what we see in the photo. So we actually have two sheeps in this photo, and they're both floating in a hallway. And there's a bigger one that looks more like Dimitri, that has around its neck some like fall leaves, foliage,
like
and stuff. I think that's just Halloween decorations.
Yeah. And then the little sheep we've seen before in the background. The little sheep, I think we know from previous posts, represents Cousin Larry. That's the Cousin Larry sheep, and they're both floating. Yeah. And this caption Dimitri writes is hilarious. He goes, "To my fans, these photo shoot very traumatic experience. Please send big love."
Big love. And indeed, our other listeners have responded with big love in the comments.
Big love, you're right. So that's great. That's a good one. Nice and simple. And you could see very simple. The wire also kind of like calling back to the wire.
In the hallway to the bedroom.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great. So. Good one.
Good one, Dimitri Sheep. Everyone go follow Dimitri Sheep. We love it. Love it. And now we're at the section of our show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, or PS Today, in which we think about what would change or how would this episode be made differently if this story was happening today in 2022. Imran, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think largely the setup would hold up. The basic premise.
You watch bad movies.
Watching something scary. Maybe the movies are updated, the references are updated, but you could still, it's a kind of a timeless plot. The one thing I did think of was, is this early binge watching? Remember when they had marathons? Like now, if you wanted to do horror movie marathon, you could do it whenever. You could watch dozens of movies in a row. You can watch anything now.
Yeah, but you can't like pause or skip forward.
Back then you couldn't. Now you can. Now
movie marathons. Now everything's a marathon. We don't even use that word anymore. Everything, like you just binge a whole series in a weekend.
Yeah, he's pulling the Netflix and binging things, which I thought was kind of interesting.
And then again, as always, we have social media today, so I'm sure that Larry would like pull out his phone and video Balky like shooting fire or floating or whatever.
What's this?
And then people would be like, "No, these are just camera tricks."
You'd have better special
he would
effects.
be like, "No filter, I promise.
No filter.
This really happened."
Yeah. No, but it's a cute episode, and it does have a plot that would still hold up.
It would hold up.
Yeah.
It would hold up.
Largely still hold up. So that's a lot of fun.
I mean, people still love Halloween. People still love scary movies. We're still making. Maybe it would be like a paranormal activity marathon,
right.
or like scary movie. Like one particular brand or franchise.
Or Nightmare on Elm Street.
Marathon. Yeah,
Jordan Peele still putting out pretty solid horror movies. With a very contemporary, modern twist on things. Yeah. They're fantastic. So this genre will never go away. These movies are also like critic proof. Like critics, they can put out a movie, critics can bash it, doesn't matter. People
still watch.
And they release them all year round. Like it's not just Halloween. Horror movies will be a thing, and they've always have been.
What's your favorite horror movie?
I don't know. Like the memorable ones for me, like is the character-driven ones, like your Freddy Kruegers, your Michael Myers. But
I think we've actually had this conversation on the show before.
I do like the paranormal activity ones using the security footage and cameras inside.
But the gimmick got old by like the fifth one.
I guess, but the idea of that like ghost appearing on your indoor camera, like that's still kind of creepy. It's still a thing that shows up in videos.
My favorite of all time is Jeepers Creepers.
Oh,
the
that's
first
a
one.
great
The second was crap, but the first one, it has all the classic like genre elements of like a monster, a don't go in there, and the dramatic music.
Don't go in the basement, baby. What are you doing?
And I've seen it a million times, and I still get scared, and it's still
that one is really not even that scary as much as like suspenseful, and it's got a lot of good twists and jumps, but. Yeah,
that's right. There's a difference between frightening and suspenseful. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So PS today, this would hold up. We would watch this again today. That's it for today's show. Join us next week when we will learn about moving a piano.
I mean, again, this is another thing where sitcoms still do this. Moving a big piece of furniture, never
Pianos
not
are
funny.
still a thing,
Yes.
and they still need to be moved.
And it's never not funny. Especially, it just reminds me of Ross on Friends going, pivot, pivot.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's always funny. It's always going to be
Exactly.
funny. In the meantime, listener, check out the show notes for this episode where you can find a link to how you can support us with some digdas. Actual digdas. Well, actual U.S. currency. I'm calling them digdas. But you can buy us a coffee. There's a link to our danceandjoypod.com/support. We'll take you to our Buy Us a Coffee page where you can support the show and ensures that we keep making the show. Every little bit helps. We love your support. Thank you for all the people who have supported us and bought us some virtual coffees. Very appreciated.
And if you can't do that, that's totally fine too. But please do visit our website, danceofjoypod.com. There you'll find all of the places where you can find our podcast, where you can like and subscribe and leave us a rating or review. That would be very helpful as well. It doesn't cost a thing. You can also see on the website all of our social media links. If you would be so kind to go and like and follow us on those as well, we would very much appreciate it. And let us know your thoughts on Perfect Strangers, on this episode, on our show. There's a button on the main side of our webpage. You can leave us a voice message, or you can send us an email, or hit us up on any of the social medias.
I want to know, what's a movie that traumatized you, listener, when you were little? It's always fun to revisit your past traumas. Got to work through them.
Let us know. Let us know. And Imran, what is the most important thing our listeners should do?
Oh, the most important thing is never take a 6-year-old to see a horror movie that you shouldn't be going to, because it may affect the person for the rest of their life. Let me tell you.
That is true. What is the second most important thing our listeners should do?
Well, after you don't traumatize your cousins, make sure you share this show with the Perfect Strangers fan in your life, or someone you think would enjoy the Perfect Strangers. They can watch along on IMDb TV and join us on our Facebook group.
Yes.
And just live some nostalgia and have fun with Balky and Larry.
We are on a mission to spread the joy of Perfect Strangers through our podcast to everyone in the world, and you can help us do that. Just share this podcast with a friend, and we will get there. And now we are so happy.
We do the dance of joy.
Hey, 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 hey.